The bright lights of Canary Wharf, London. One of the main financial hubs of the world. Deals being done, investments being made. Just the sort of place where you might expect to find the illuminated wings of a flying bee badge atop the bonnet of a Bentley. This is the four-door Flying Spur, and its LEDs both outside and in give the blazing buildings a run for their money. It looks at home here, so it's odd to think that it might not have even existed were it not for an investment made nearly a century ago.
The big thing to talk about with this particular Flying Spur is obviously the engine, this being the V8 version.
Although it might not have the kudos of the W12, the smaller engine does weigh a significant 65 kilos less than its bigger brother. And it still puts out 542 brake horsepower and 568 pounds-foot of torque.
Which is adequate, I think you'll agree. 0 to 62, 4.1 seconds and a top speed of 198 miles an hour. It's never been the most sort of sonorous or vocal engine, this 4-litre turbocharged V8. We've obviously seen it in things like the Panamera, the RS6, and yes, it is sort of more vocal in those, a bit more sporty. But in this sort of car, you just need a sort of distant wooffle to let you know that you've got multiple cylinders up front. What this engine really needs to be able to do is, just soothe you along the road. And to that extent, all that torque, that 568 pounds-foot of torque, comes in from just 2,000 RPM. We've got the 8-speed dual-clutch auto in this as well, and you can hear it sort of as you pull away from some lights, almost just sort of shuffling quickly up through the ratios, just to not unsettle the car, just to ease you along. When you do escape the city, of course, then the engine can come alive, but it doesn't feel like it sort of necessarily wants to be in those upper reaches of its rev range. It can, and it will do a decent standing start, as I say, 0 to 62 in 4.1 seconds. The chassis, likewise. It's sort of surprising, I think, when you see a car like this travelling at speed. It's a bit like school sports day and the parents' race, and you see hitherto hidden levels of competitiveness and speed being revealed by people you just didn't think were capable of it. Like its predecessor, this has the lovely long wheelbase feel when you get it flowing through particularly sort of just longer turns, and it really does settle into a turn and feel really, really nice actually. We've got power going to all four wheels, but it's very definitely rear biased, and yeah, it's a surprisingly nice thing to hustle down a road actually.
Brought into the tighter confines of the city, that dynamism translates into a car that feels remarkably unintimidating to drive at slower speeds. Despite being longer than a business lunch, it never feels unwieldy.
It feels easy to place and not that intimidating to drive actually. One thing that I don't think they've completely nailed with this car, and it is a very crucial thing, is the ride. We've got 3-chamber air suspension in this car, and the primary ride is excellent. So the big bumps, those sort of big hefts as it were, they're dealt with extremely well. It's the secondary ride that's the problem. Those smaller bumps, the sort of the background noise almost. And it just means that you don't feel as isolated, as soothed by this car over a long journey as I think you would expect to be honest. You could argue that this is sort of in this car's character. It's always going to be more sporting than something like a Rolls-Royce, but it is also a limousine, and if you were sitting in the back of this, I think it would bug you. What certainly wouldn't bug you is the interior of this car, which is wonderful. It's something we know Bentley does well, but it really doesn't get better than this. You've got the split veneer here, the crown cut walnut over grand black. You've also got the spinning Toblerone of wonder here with the screen here and then the dials and then just the blank face with the veneers there as well, which is just, I don't know, it's a bit like some of the buildings around here where you've got the modern next to the really old. I think you have to have this in the car, but it is optional at just under £5,000.
In fact, quite a lot of what you see on this car is optional, because it has the £15,000 Mulliner driving specification that gives you, amongst other things, the 3D door cards, lofted diamond designed quilting in the seats, sports pedals and 22-inch wheels. This car also has the £9,000 styling specification, which gives you the carbon fibre bits on the outside. Then there's the £6,000 touring specification, which includes things like adaptive cruise and night vision, the £2,000 mood lighting specification, the £3,500 blackline specification, and appropriately the £4,000 city specification. Oh, and the 48-volt anti-roll system and rear-wheel steering are optional on the V8 too.
But anyway, it's easy to spend, I would have thought, a couple £100,000 on a car like this, even though it starts at £150,000. The other thing that really doesn't disappoint with this car is the exterior looks of it. Because while the old version of the Flying Spur always very definitely looked like a four-door version of the Continental GT, this has its own style. That bluffer front to it. I love the strip running down the bonnet, which sort of echoes, I don't know, the sort of the bonnet hinge along an old 4.5 litre from the 1920s. Obviously, we've got things that we've seen in other Bentleys in recent years, like the cut glass headlights, which look as though they should be holding some sort of cocktail. Curiously though, the thing that most people have commented on with this car is the colour. Lovely shade of British racing green, they say, but actually Bentley calls this Bernato green, after Wolf Bernato, perhaps the most important of the Bentley boys. And they mostly had flats here, on Grosvenor Square. Bernato was at number 50.
In fact, Babe, as he was nicknamed, was born less than a mile away at Spencer House on St James Palace in 1895. His father, Barney, made the family fortune from diamond mining in South Africa. De Beers lives on to this day. Wolf was wicket-keeper for Surrey County Cricket Club. He was an amateur boxer, he won prizes in motorboat racing, but as a sportsman he is of course best known for having a 100% winning record at Le Mans. 3 entries, 3 victories. And those victories were often celebrated with dinners at the Savoy, where both he and his father had cocktails named after them. Wolf's beverage contained blue curaçao, the colour recalling his race from the Côte d'Azur to England against Le Train Bleu in 1930, a race that finished at the Conservative Club on St James. In the First World War, Bernato was an officer in the Royal Field Artillery, but later in life he became a wing commander in the RAF, and his daughter Diana served in the ATA. When it all came to an end in 1948, he was older than many of the other Bentley boys, but still young at the age of 52 when he died of a blood clot in the London Clinic on Devonshire Place. But for all his many incredible achievements and escapades, what we as car lovers should celebrate Wolf Bernato for most is his financial investments. In 1926, via his company Barrowmans Limited, he put £100,000 into Bentley, thereby saving the company and the workforce. The business went through rocky times subsequently, but those years in the late 20s and early 30s with Bernato as chairman cemented the Bentley name and reputation. His investment in the business is arguably the reason cars like the Flying Spur exist today.